rock and roll in here about this. All right, I just want to say, I want to preface this with I am giving up the Mets Yankee Subway Series tonight to be here with you guys because that's how much I enjoy Dr. Rebekah Griffith. So, Jose, take it away, man. Yeah, you're lucky. You're lucky I like you. Floor is yours, Jose. Have at it.
That's hilarious, Dr. Phil. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Rebekah Griffith, thank you for being with us. To all that will be seeing this recording or joining us, today we have the pleasure of having Dr. Rebekah Griffith join us. She's going to talk about professional planning. And I'm honestly really excited about that. Professionalism and just the whole professional outlook of like post-grad life is something that I'm already starting to think about, right? So it just seems well-timed that we have you here with us tonight. If you want to take
awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. This is one of the things that I love to talk about most. I think that professional development planning is really critical for when you're a student, but also if you're a seasoned clinician to help like prevent burnout and to help you really make your career everything that you want it to be. That being said, I just read a book called Think Again by Adam Grant. And one of the things that it emphasizes in this book is you shouldn't ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, because you don't want them to get so overcommitted to a particular path that they can't pivot and they can't rethink, and then they end up way too far down the path that really doesn't serve them. And so one of the examples he used in this book was his brother, who ended up becoming a neurosurgeon, despite the fact that he really wanted to go into business. And he had all these forks in the road that were like really telling him business, but he was like, no, I'm like too far down this path to back out now. And he is a neurosurgeon, but he went on to found his own company. So I want you guys to consider when I give this presentation that this is a roadmap for how you grow and how you want to achieve the things that you want to achieve, but bearing in mind that you can change it anytime you want to. And that none of this is written in stone or set in stone. And I want you to consider that while you might make a professional development plan, and it's very easy to go down that one path, to be open to pivoting, to be open to reviewing it regularly and checking in with yourself. And so we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So you guys will be fine.
I totally agree. And I think I'm figuring it out every day. I cannot share my screen though. So if somebody could give me permission, that would be great.
I can do that. All right, give that a try.
Can you see that?
I do not see that yet. Now I do.
Coming.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so let me make sure I can get this in the right spot actually, because I can't see it very well. Just a second. Had so many meetings today. I'm just stunned that this is the first one that I've had technical difficulties in, but unfortunately you get to be
it's inevitable.
Bear the brunt of that.
That's bound to happen.
The composure is impressive, though.
All right, how about now?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so I will tell you two things about my presentation style on Zoom. First, like, I'm not going to notice the chat, so please just like say a thing. If you have questions, please just interrupt me as we go. I'm totally fine with this being a collaborative discussion, so please feel free to interrupt. I'm not going to notice you raising your hand. I'm not going to notice the chat. I'm just going to be into it. And so if you could just interrupt me, that'd be great. All right, so disclosures. I'm the owner and founder of the ED DPT and Rebekah Griffith Physical Therapy LLC. My other disclosures that I'm not a teacher by trade. I'm not in academia per se. And my primary role in life is to parent these beautiful children. And so everything else that I do is gravy. So when I talk about professional development planning, one of the things I also want you to consider is life-work balance and not work-life balance. And so this for me is my priority and everything else I do is a hobby. So those are my disclosures. So we're leading with the boss, right? We're gonna lead with Oprah. So let passion drive your profession. And I think that's important, particularly as we go into healthcare, which is it's just a difficult profession to be in, particularly these days. And I think that there's going to be a reckoning within the healthcare system of things that need to change for us to continue to be successful. So I'm just going to plant the seed here that you need to really be passionate about what you do. And if you're not, it's going to be very difficult for you to sustain what you're doing. So, because of Oprah, right? You get a goal and you get a goal and we all get a goal. And so obviously you are very goal-driven people and individuals. If you're here for this meeting when you have finals the next day, and if you're a physical therapy student, obviously you didn't get here by accident. You've set goals for yourself and you've met them. But that doesn't stop when you finish PT school. So we're going to talk about a little bit of how you achieve those professional goals. And the main components here are professional development planning, mentoring, and training. But professional development really needs to be at the base of what you do. And mentoring and training are just tools that help you achieve those goals. So why does professional development planning matter? So you may not have even heard of professional development planning, and we'll talk a little bit about what it is and how it works. But some of the research-based reasons behind professional development planning are that it increases retention. So if you're going to open a clinic, I would encourage you to consider having professional development planning resources for your staff. And partly that re-energizes people. And if you're a student and you're struggling right now, making a professional development plan might light your fire a little bit. It helps provide you more control in planning your path. It helps you research what paths are available to you. It gives you some leadership. It helps you find mentorship, and it gives you a concrete way to help your mentee if you're in that mentor role. It also helps you identify organizational and individual strengths and concerns. So from a professional development perspective, if all of you were to fill out a PDP and identify your needs within your PT program right now, that would give Dr. Fiel a lot of good feedback about where the gaps were and what he needed to provide in order to make you all more successful. So from an organizational standpoint, if I'm running a clinic with 100 staff members and every staff member's professional development plan says they need more training, obviously I'm failing there. And my organizational concern is that I'm failing in the area of training. So it can help you build a better plan for your organization as well. It also improves efficiency. Like if you know that you want to be an orthopedic clinical specialist, let's put that on your plan. Let's plan that work and let's get it done in 5 years instead of wandering around to it in 15 years. So another thing that it will help you is that it will help you identify what you need. Do you need training? Do you need mentoring and not training? Do you need structural changes within your organization or the way that you're doing things as you study for PT school? Do you need continuing education? And maybe not yet, right? Like you guys may not be to that point, but it's something to consider for when you graduate. And then what resources do you have and what resources do you need in order to be more successful? So basically, your professional development plan is going to be a roadmap to success and to help you achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. So professional development is all of these things. It's education, it's studying, it's failing, it's succeeding, it's learning, it's growing, but it also involves here at the bottom, I like how it says responsibility and hard work, like that's definitely part of this. And I mean, other people might call it manifesting, right? Like this is how we're going to manifest who you want to be and where you want to end up so that you are living a life of design and not a life of accident. So this is the professional development cycle. And the step one is to define what your vision are, what your goals are, and where you want to go. Step two is really assessment. And we're going to talk about each of these in a little more detail, assessing where you are, what you have to work with, what deficits you have, and where you want to end up. And then you'll design that plan and truly like design the future that you want to live into professionally. Step four is taking action. That's the hard part. It's doing the work on your plan. And step five is reflecting and reevaluating. And then you start again. So professional development is not a thing you do. It's a cycle that you're constantly in, and you may be somewhere else. Right now, I'm personally in the reflection cycle and the evaluation cycle because my 1-year professional development plan is complete. And I set at that time 5-year goals and 10-year goals, and I need to reevaluate if those are still important to me, what I was successful on, and what I need to work on. And we're going to walk through an example, and I'll show you what my professional development plan looked like a year ago, and we'll talk about how to use this tool specifically. So assessment. Different things that I want you to consider when you're assessing this is, what have you already done for your professional development? You've gotten into PT school, right? Like you're there, you're to that step. How are you doing in PT school? Where are your strengths? Definitely look at your strengths. Where are your weaknesses? What are you missing? What do you need? Do you need help in a particular subject? Are you thriving in a different subject? What do you have to offer others? Where do you want to be and how do you want to grow? So really assessing where you're at right now so that you can start making appropriate goals for what you want to come next. The other thing that I ask people to consider when in their assessment stage is really what their vision is for their career. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but think about, as we go through this, like what your vision is. And when I say vision, I want you to think about, if everything was going exactly the way you wanted it to go, what would that look like? So then the next step, oh man, oh, that didn't go well, hold on. I can't believe it just totally closed down. Can you still see it?
Yep.
We're all
Okay,
good.
good. Well, we're not all good, but we're gonna get there.
We're getting there.
All right, so brainstorming obviously is the next piece, like brainstorming your ideas, like where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What areas of physical therapy light your fire? What areas outside of physical therapy light your fire? Like, I have a friend who I went to PT school with who does some physical therapy, but she's also a professional mountain bike racer. It's okay to think of things outside of physical therapy. So when you're thinking about professional development planning and you're brainstorming, there are no limits. So what I like to say to people is you have to start thinking outside the matrix. So when I go through this with coworkers, they think within the organizational structure that they're in. So right now, you're students, right? You're thinking within that organizational structure, but can you think outside of that? Can you think outside of PT as it is and as you know it to be? And that's how people find their niches. That's how the profession grows. And can you think, when you're thinking about your future professional goals, what else do you want to have in your life? Because when you're brainstorming, you need to make space for all of that. You need to make space for having a family. You need to make space for being able to travel. You need to make space for, having a passion to play soccer, whatever it might be. That needs to be a part of your brainstorming so that you're including all the facets of that life-work balance, which I'm going to beat to death here, but life-work balance is really one of the things that's going to get you the furthest professionally. Then you're going to set your goals. You're going to take all that brainstorming and you're going to narrow it down. You're going to funnel it into specific goals. And depending on where you are in your PT school education, I'm sure you've talked about SMART goals, yes? Specific, measurable, what's the A? Achievable, relevant, time-based. So you want to make sure that those goals are specific. Like within 1 year, I'm going to sit for the OCS exam. Within 1 year, I will graduate from PT school, that type of thing. Or I will find a profession or a position where I have my APTA dues paid, whatever it might be. But it needs to be specific. You need to assign the time to it. And it needs to be meaningful to you. Like it needs to be a goal that you're actually excited and passionate about. Then this is the scary part for a lot of people when you share that plan with somebody. And I want you to consider who you're going to share that with and make sure that person is invested in you. So I want you to consider having multiple people. One person who's like your total cheerleader, like they're going to be like, gosh, this is amazing. I love it. I'm going to support you any way I can. But then I also want you to think about having somebody who maybe isn't your biggest fan take a look at it. And maybe that person's like a Debbie Downer, or they're the kind of person who's going to like poke holes in your balloon a little bit. So when I did my first plan, I sent it to somebody I knew was like going to be a champion for me, and they were very supportive and they asked good questions. And then I sent it to somebody else who I have like a slight perception that maybe they're not my biggest fan, right? And I said, I would really appreciate it if you could be a committed listener and reviewer of this professional development plan. And that person gave me more valuable feedback than I've ever gotten before. And some of it was, these goals don't seem connected. What's your overall goal? Where do you want this to take you? I need you to explain to me why these things are important, because all of this together doesn't make sense. Do you think this connects to your vision? Because I'm reading this objectively and this doesn't feel like you to me. So make sure you're having kind of people who you can trust to give you accurate, authentic feedback, and then people who are also going to cheer you on. Part of the reason you want to share is you want feedback about whether or not this is really the right direction. You want somebody to poke holes in your theory. You also really want somebody to help keep you accountable. So consider having one of the people that is going to work through this with you be a mentor that you might keep over the long term, so you can continue to check in with them. Now, like your professional development plan, your mentorship needs will change, and so will your mentors. But start with somebody who you can check in regularly that will help you stay accountable. And you can trade that. You can be accountable to them for their plan and vice versa.
That's honestly really cool, Dr. Phil. I think we can even make an activity out of this for our members, kind of hold each other accountable and really be honest with ourselves.
Yep.
Pretty big. Yeah.
I'm sure Dr. Griffith has a PDF that she can give us on that. So when we're all said and done here, I think that'll be good to accompany the recording.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want you to consider too, when you're sharing this, you have to share with your personal stakeholders, not just your business stakeholders. So I had somebody who I was working through their professional development plan with them, and one of their goals was going to take them out of the country and working on a service mission out of the country. They have a 2-year-old and they're the primary breadwinner. Like there are so many components to that. So when you're sharing this, share this with your personal and professional stakeholders, so that you're not making plans without people who need to be involved, and so that those people in your life, when we talk about life-work balance, are on board with you and are cheering you on and are not going to be obstacles, but be supporters. But it has to work for your stakeholders as well. Now, if it's just you and your dog, or, go do the thing. But in life, it's often not that simple. Okay, so then next step is like taking action. And that's the best part. It's exciting, particularly if you've done a really good job with your plan and you've set out your roadmap. Then it's just checking things off a to-do list. And I love me a to-do list. Like I will literally write things on the list after I've done them, if they weren't on the list, just to cross them off. Now, I know not everybody feels that way about to-do lists, but I love that. And I think taking action makes you feel more in control of what you're doing and less at the mercy of everything around you. So acting on that and being able to cross things off that list and seeing measurable progress really will help sustain you on your professional development journey. And then you're going to review it. Set yourself an amount of time in advance at which you'll go back to this and review. And that might be 1 month, every 1 month, you're going to look at this. So I have a calendar reminder on the 30th of every month. I look at my professional development plan and I update that. And I think, gosh, is this in alignment with what I'm doing? Am I actually doing the things on here? Or is this a different me that isn't committed to this? So I want you to consider regular intervals to review and overhaul your plan. So after you finish your professional development plan, you'll know what you need. You'll have like a needs assessment completed. It's like looking through your pantry and seeing what grocery items are missing, and then meal planning so that you know what ingredients you need to get. So after you're completing your professional development plan, do you have a knowledge gap? Do you have a personal or professional growth goal? Or do you have missing resources? And so that'll help you figure out what to do next. So now we're going to talk about some of these things, because I think they get grouped together and they maybe don't make enough sense. And so for us to really know what we need, I think it's important to kind of clarify what these different words mean. And they can have different meanings to different people, but these are definitions that I'm going to set out as truth today. And you can rethink those if they don't resonate with you. So mentoring, coaching, training, education, resources, like what are the differences and how do I know what I need? Mentoring, I really love this picture. Mentoring is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. So mentoring is typically an ongoing collaborative relationship between two individuals, one of whom tends to be more experienced than the other. Now, I will tell you, I don't necessarily believe in that. And I recently read a quote that said, if you don't have a mentor who's 10 years younger than you, you're missing out, because we really need that kind of future perspective, that younger perspective. And just a completely different, fresh set of eyes. So it's not necessarily age, it's not necessarily experience, but a collaborative relationship that's ongoing, that's more of your higher view as opposed to specific needs. Training really refers to the acquisition of skills primarily acquired from base education, continuing education, or facility-based onboarding. So that's what you guys are doing in PT school. You're going through training. You're not going through mentorship. You're going through training. You are being trained to become a physical therapist. You're getting education, you're getting knowledge, you're getting professional insight, you're studying, you're practicing, you're using those skills. So you are in the training piece of your education. When you start a new job, you'll undergo training at that facility. Coaching is really somebody who's completed their training, but they might need specific performance issues or needs that they need help to move through. So for example, you feel pretty good with vestibular stuff, but you might need some help with your handling skills to do the EPP in a comfortable manner for your patients. So you might need a coach that you already have the training that just helps you kind of improve those hands-on skills. So coaching relationships tend to be specific and short in duration until your specifically outlined needs are met. So if I don't think of like having a coach as like somebody who's going to mentor me through lots of things. I think of that as a mentor. So a coach is really, I need somebody for the specific thing who's like a pro at this. I don't need a running mentor. I need a running coach that's going to make me run the 1600 faster. It's a specific deficit that you need somebody to coach you through. Because ideally, right, like I know how to run a mile, but do I know how to perform better and get better at that one specific thing? That's when I would seek coaching. So education really refers to the pursuit of education not provided with your base education or acquisition of new skills outside of your job requirements. So that's you, Jose, going to that conference. Outside of your training, you wanted some more education. So you went to CSM and you saw what was out there and you pursued that outside of your regular requirements. So you got that extra education to supplement your training. And as a physical therapist, for me, I'm in the middle of a fellowship program right now to pursue more education that's really outside of the training that I need to complete my job. And as part of that, I'll have a mentor that helps me through my fellowship program, but then I might still need coaching on particular skills. So I might need 3 different people kind of through that pursuit, or that one person could serve all of those roles. So resources, what resources do you need? When you're a student, right? Like you need tuition money and you need books and you need food and you need rent. Like those are resources that you have to be successful at PT school. You also need time. You need to understand the kind of system that you're working in. You need to understand the online platforms. You need to understand how you can access the professors that you need to. So your resources are really things that you're going to be able to access specifically that fill certain needs. So for me, one of the resources that I need in order to complete my fellowship is I need to be able to find a clinic that I can do some mentorship hours in. And I also need to identify the time to do that. So that's one example of different resources. If you're running a clinic and you want your staff to be able to do dry needling, you need to do you have the right equipment for that? Do you have policies and procedures in place that will make your staff successful? Do you have staff that's interested in doing that? Do you have staff that's trained to do that? So that's one way that you can consider resources as part of your professional development planning. So here are some examples. Now I changed this a little bit. Just based on that you guys are students and not PTs yet. So one example for a PT student might be in your 1-year professional development planning, complete your first clinical, attending one conference, or becoming an APTA member might be goals that you could have at this time. Your 5-year goals, hopefully you're looking forward to what you're going to do after PT school, completing PT school, identifying your practice area that you want to look into, and then achieving your first physical therapist position. When you're a new grad, you're going to create that PDP, identify mentors that can help guide you through that process, particularly in those first few years. And even though you just graduated PT school, you're still going to have knowledge gaps. And you may not know what those are at first. So part of your 1-year plan should be to assess knowledge gaps that you have. And then I'm going to call people like Dr. Fiel and myself seasoned, So like a 1-year goal might be to start a new business or run for an APTA position like Dr. Field is doing within the Geriatrics Academy. Identifying a younger mentor, somebody who can come in with a fresh take on what you've been doing. Or your 5-year goal might be attaining a faculty position or expanding your scope of practice. And those are not specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based because there's not that much space on the slide, but you get the general idea. So we're going to talk through a PDP plan here. And one of the things when I was working through this process and learning about professional development planning, and I was actually collaborating with an occupational therapist about this plan. And she said, you know, the thing that's really missing here is vision. And I thought, oh gosh, OTs, man, they want to bring it back to like your life. And at first I thought, this is just too squishy for me. Like, I can't do this. But in fact, what I've found is that the vision for you and your career is truly the touchstone that you'll come back to every time an opportunity comes up. So this is my vision that I'm sharing with you. To remain challenged as a leader in the physical therapy profession through maximizing knowledge, professional growth, clinical skill, and expanding practice by participating in innovative patient care, community and professional service, student development, and professional mentorship. So when Dr. Field asked me if I wanted to give this presentation, I think about my vision statement. Is this consistent with who I want to be and what I want to do? Is this an activity that connects with my touchstone? And it is, right? Because I want to share what I've learned through student and professional development. I want to serve students. I want to expand our profession. And so it fits perfectly. It was a great opportunity for me to do some of the things that are meaningful to me. So I'm going to see if I'm smart enough to screen share a different screen here so you can see an example of a professional development plan. Can you see that okay?
Oh yeah, you fancy.
Aha. Okay, so this is my professional development plan for a year ago. This is not my updated plan, but just to give you an idea of where I started from. So this first section is about assessment. What have you been doing in the past 1 to 5 years for professional development? So I took on a leadership role. I did a certification program in population health. I applied for a fellowship. I identified a mentor. I took students. I started some educational development. It asks you, what are you most proud of? And for me, it was like creating an EDPT program and having a great family. Like really, that is a huge focus for me. Is my professional development more important or my personal development more important? For me, really, it's my family first. And then what are barriers that I've had? So limited work time, decreased flexibility, the pandemic, like all of those things I've listed here. Is this where you thought you'd be at this stage in your career? And that's a hard question for a lot of people, particularly if they're coming at this 10 years down the road. And for me, this isn't at all where I thought I would be, but my focus has changed significantly. So it's actually exactly where I want to be. I love these questions about what value do you bring? And for me, the strengths that I thought of were efficiency, organization, new ideas, a good work ethic, a positive attitude, empathy, connection with others, and outside experience that I could bring to this role. Where do you find yourself not being fully present? And that helps you kind of identify things you don't want to be doing. So for me, I don't like working on floors in the hospital where I am bored, where I feel like it's not leveraging my skills. I'm a neurologic clinical specialist, where working on the pulmonary unit for me it does not light my fire. It does not bring me joy. And I'm probably not the best PT for those patients. So things to consider about that. Then also, how does what you're doing for work connect with your values? And this is a moment where I encourage people to really think about that. Like if it doesn't connect with your values, you're probably going in the wrong direction. So why are you here? Just reflecting on why you chose this profession. Then assessing, we're still assessing. These are talents that I have. These are areas for development I have. I need to work on my leadership skills, my delegation skills, my focus, and identifying resources so that I have better access to those. What are my knowledge gaps? How can I fill those knowledge gaps? What accomplishments have I had? Because I think it's always good to follow your areas for development and your knowledge gaps with your successes, right? So you can kind of reflect back on both of those things. And then I'm define my vision here. Then when you're going to identify your goals, you really don't want to rush. Go ahead. Did somebody say something?
No, you're good.
So you don't want to rush. Take your time brainstorming. These are some examples of the 1-year goals. I wanted to initiate a musculoskeletal triage pilot program within the emergency department program. I wanted to complete my fellowship coursework. I wanted to identify a new mentor for professional and leadership development. So those are general goals that I wanted to do. Then for my 5 years, I want to complete my term as chief delegate. I want to achieve these separate certifications. The things that are crossed off were at this time things that were completed. These are other things I wanted to do. Create a continuing education course for physical therapists, implement a manual therapy program within acute care. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask you a quick question? So
Of course.
in example, and thank you for sharing this. This is really like giving me like an idea of exactly like how to build one or go about one. But this is directly organizational, right? We're not adding stuff outside of PT here, or would that be like another section?
You absolutely can. You 100% can do that.
Okay.
So this particular document was like specific for my performance review that I completed for my performance review. So it really was limited to just PT related things specifically. But I would encourage you to include this. I mean, you could call it even a life development plan, and you could have a professional section and a personal section. And you can use the exact same process for both.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Like in 1 year, I'm going to buy my first house. In 5 years, I want to have a second property in the mountains, like things like that. Or I want to be married in 2025, like whatever it might be. You can definitely include those personal achievements on here too. So for me, one of the things that was on my personal development plan was to get my black belt in Taekwondo. And I did achieve that in April of this year. So I definitely have a personal development plan as well to help me keep all of those things balanced. And when you put them together, it really helps you see the whole picture. So I appreciate that question. It definitely is a little incomplete from this perspective. So here we are a year later, okay, because this was from June of 2021. And you can see down here, I have my goals. And then this is how I broke down what I needed to do in order to achieve those goals. And what I'll tell you is, reflecting back, because it's my 1 year time to update this, this is done. This is done. This is done. This is done. All of those things are done. Term 1 is almost complete. This HURT certification is complete. This is in process. This is on the back burner because my priorities have changed based on what I want to do in and outside of work. This is in progress. Like I'm hopeful to finish that within the next year. And this is done. So when you have your 5-year plan here, once you've kind of knocked off this stuff, you can start looking ahead and building the groundwork to achieving these things. And it's amazing how much you'll achieve when you have put out there specifically what you want to achieve. Now I've got a big goal here of becoming the APTA Colorado president. So anybody Colorado people listening, you could totally vote for me in some future year to come. All right. But to do that, there's a lot of groundwork that goes into that, right? Like you have to serve on the board and you have to be an APTA member in good standing. And there's a lot that comes into that. But I can't decide tomorrow that I want to be the APTA president next week. So this plan really helps me make a roadmap for how to get there. So what I need to do now is redo this section in order to start chipping away at more of these 5-year goals. And I need to move some of these 5-year goals to the 1-year goal section. So I know where to put my focus right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. And I love like how this is like an active process and we're kind of seeing you chip away at the pieces here.
Yeah, and so this red section, I decided did not resonate with my mission and my vision. So becoming an OCS, I have my NCS and I'm going to complete the fellowship program. What value add was taking the OCS certification for me? Was that going to help me be a leader in the PT profession? Probably not. Was it going to improve my clinical skill? I don't think so. I mean, the fellowship program in orthopedic manual physical therapy is doing that. And it's not going to help me expand practice by taking this test. It's not going to make me more innovative when I'm getting these skills elsewhere. It's not going to help me contribute to students if I'm getting that knowledge in another way. So for me, that was a misguided thing that I thought I needed to have But really what that would do is take me away from other things I want to focus on. The time it would take to study for that exam, the time that it would take to continue to recertify another board specialty. So it helped me really to look back on, does this match where I want to go? And is this a critical piece of what I want to do? So it's okay to cross things off. It's okay to take things off the list. So normally I would just delete that, but I left that on there so you guys could see kind of a little bit of that process. So then you can see the next step is to evaluate your plan, share with an internal or external mentor. I really call that like your cheerleader or your detractor. And obviously these are still positive detractors, and then decide when you're going to reevaluate that. So I try to look at mine monthly, but I try to really reevaluate it quarterly and then redo the entire thing once a year. I think measuring your progress is one of the best ways to help you identify that you're continuing to move. Because I have moments, and Dr. Field can attest to this, where I'm like, I'm accomplishing absolutely nothing. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. But that committed listener can say to you, hey, like, look back at your PDP, go through that, make sure you've crossed off anything that you've already achieved here. And then you can visibly see that progress. And you can also decide, are you spinning your wheels? Do you want to continue spinning your wheels? And what will it take to get out of that rut? So let me pull this back up here. Am I on the right screen or the wrong screen?
I believe the right screen.
Okay. All right. So
a quick question. Have you found yourself to be maybe like in a plateau or like in a rut? And how did you like actively get yourself out of there or back on track with the PDP?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think sometimes when you have those days where you're like, what I'm doing doesn't matter, none of this is getting me where I want to be, this is taking too much time, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm sure every PT student has that moment, every physical therapist has had that moment, every human has had that moment. This is not where I want to be, this is not what I want to be doing. And I think sometimes you need to look at where you are in the rest of your life. And I'm going to say life work balance again. Are you managing your nutrition, hydration, stress, movement, and sleep? Sometimes that's all it is when you're in a rut, that you're not balancing your wheel of wellness. Sometimes it's that what you're doing is not what you thought it would be. And it's not where you want to be. Just like that OCS. I really thought I wanted to do that. But why? And that was adding stress to me. Like even looking at the application process felt awful. And it felt like this is not the right path. This is not what I want to dedicate my time to. So I think it's okay in that moment to rethink what's on your plan. And if it's not what is helping you see your path, it may be time to reevaluate. And then you just make a new goal. It's okay to delete. None of this is in pen. So if your 10-year goal was to own your own practice and be a sports physical therapist, like I interviewed a guy last week who I'm going to highlight this week on my podcast, who wanted to be a sports physical therapist. Like that was his goal all through PT school. And then he ended up going through a residency program within the VA system and found a passion for working with our veterans, and now practices in the emergency department, revolutionizing care for those who've served us. But if you'd asked him when he was in PT school if that was the path he was going to take, he would have said absolutely not. He was going to be a sports therapist.
Yeah. I was there. I was that guy. I was going to be an ortho bro for life. I was going to be the New York Mets physical therapist. That was all I was going to do. And then life kind of threw me some curves. I went different directions, and now all of a sudden I'm in geriatrics, and here I am having to sit for my GCS in the near future and running for a position in the geriatric section. So, I mean, yeah, it can change. It can all change, and it can change frequently, and it should probably change.
And it's not bad or wrong when that happens. It does not mean you've given up on a dream. Another gem from the book that I was talking about earlier, Think Again by Adam Grant, was really that we talk about grit. And we talk about people being gritty and really sticking with things and having resilience and seeing things through. And there's something to that in a lot of cases. But there's also something to changing your mind and changing your path and not sticking with sometimes. And sometimes it's more gritty and shows more determination to be willing to change what you wanted to do and change your path.
Yeah, I call it the walk away or the step away in golf. when you go up to hit your shot and you're in your backswing and something happens, a bird squawks or you hear somebody yell or something happens, for you to be able to stop that swing before you hit an errant shot and walk away and regroup and go through your setup again is one of the hardest things to do. But it'll probably result in a better shot than if you just went for it and flubbed it, you know? So I think one of the major points here so far that I think we need to really take away is that North Star, right?
Mhm.
You talk about that a lot with finding that thing. I call it the zone of genius, right? I've been using that a lot lately, but focusing in on your passion and your zone of genius and then sticking to it. And there'll be opportunities that come along the way, and those are great, right? But you really have to assess whether this is something that's going to move you toward that North Star or deviate from your path toward the North Star. And if it's going to deviate, you've got to start learning to say no, right? One of the things we do as healthcare providers, I think, and physical therapists is we say yes to everything. We want to say yes. We want to do more. We want to get involved. But if it doesn't make sense for your North Star and where you're going and where you're heading, you've got to step away. You've got to say no. And I think that OCS is a perfect example. And really that North Star, if we kind of look at it, for you, the president is example of the Colorado APTA is a great North Star and a 10-year goal and something that needs a lot of pieces to set up along the way, like you said. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
So I have a quote that's in front of me, like on my computer, that helps me with this very concept. And it's, you have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. And that's a quote by Stephen Covey. So I want you to think about that when you're making your professional development plan. What is your why? What are the components of that vision? And for me, my components are multifaceted. I want to serve my profession. Service is very important to me. I'm committed to students. I want you to succeed. I want you to thrive. I'm committed to our profession as a whole. I want it to expand and move forward and be better than we are. And there are lots of ways to do those things. And so I have identified what are the ways that I'm best able to serve in that role. And when I look at job opportunities or service opportunities, do those align with what I'm trying to do? And if the answer is yes, I snap those up. And if the answer is no, then I have to set those aside unapologetically. If the answer is maybe, that's a good time for me to contact my mentor and be like, hey, what do you think about this? I am having trouble seeing clearly. And so I want you to take what you know from my conversations that we've had together. How can I make this decision? And I had a conversation with someone yesterday that I was trying to mentor through a situation. She said, I have to go to a meeting and I have to decide, am I going to do this or am I going to do this? And I don't feel like I can have both and I don't know what to do. And I am feeling a lot of pressure about that. So we worked through in a mentoring relationship, what were the questions she needed to ask herself and the other people involved, and what would make her feel best and which was most important to her. And in this case, her sense of identity was kind of on the line. And so we came to a place where she felt like she could move forward, still having that identity, still serving in the role she wanted, but not betraying her interests and her North Star. And so today she said that she was able to, based on really identifying her focus prior to that meeting, she was able to truly move forward in a way that suited everybody and really had the best of both worlds at the end of that. So that is another reason why you want to have a mentor. So when your North Star, when you can't see it, sometimes you need somebody to help guide you through that. All right, so next steps. What are your next steps? It's the work. So you have to do the work of making the plan. So plan your work and work your plan. And I tell you, I see so many people get frustrated in the middle of making their professional development plan and not finish. And there are lots of reasons for that. One is they can't quite see outside the matrix that they're in. They can't see possibility. One is they may not see themselves clearly. Sometimes you need that mentor to help you see who you are and really help you identify your strengths and your gifts. And after having that conversation with the mentor, that can help you get going in the right direction. Also, you may need a mentor to help you see what possibilities are out there. Particularly as a student, you don't know what you don't know. So it's helpful to have somebody help guide you through that process. So it does take a time investment, but once you get it set up, it's a really great guide to work through. It's like making a training plan for training for an Ironman, right? Like it takes a while to get all of those components in line. You've got to line up your running, cycling, and your biking, or your running, biking, and swimming blocks. Then you have to have brick days, and then you have to have interval days and cross training days, and you have to like outline what you're going to eat and how you're going to hydrate and when you're going to do this training. And it takes a long time to set that up. But once you've implemented your training plan, you can knock it off very easily, quickly, and have a good result at the end and complete that Ironman, or in this case, achieve your professional goals. So I'm happy to take any questions you have about that, or have any discussion about the benefits of professional development planning. But I hope that this was helpful to you and that you can see some possibilities out there for yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely something I want to implement. Definitely, especially within our organization in the student SIG. But a question I have for you is, you kind of mentioned the word life-work balance. And I think that's super cool, you know, because someone like myself, who's a strength and conditioning coach, I'm around athletes all the time. I mean, I'm around graduate students all the time. We really just kind of work at one pace, and that's just like go.
Grind.
Just everyone's caffeinated. And I love the idea of life work balance, and how you mentioned your family is your priority. So how do you make that shift? Because that's kind of very not commonplace right now, I feel like.
Right. So I think there are times where we all fail at that. And there are moments where we all are going to have that time where those things are not in balance. And that's the goal. It's not necessarily the reality, right? So today, for example, as part of my life work balance, I have several things on my schedule today, several commitments. But I also have my kids home because it's summer. So for me, one example of how I prioritize things were, this is the time that I'm going to spend with my kids, and I'm going to be 100% focused on them. And I'm going to let everything else go. And that's hard to do, particularly when you're a student. Then this evening, because I have things back to back to back, like that's not really fair to my kids. They're at a sleepover so that they can really have a great time doing their own thing while I can focus on this. And that's just a small example, right? But when you're a student and you're like around athletes and you have so many different priorities, what I need you to consider are the basics of life-work balance. And the first thing that I want you to think about is your own personal, physical, and mental well-being. Because you can't have life-work balance without that. And I alluded to it briefly before, what I call the wheel of wellness. And I talk to my patients about that. And that's sleep, hydration, nutrition, stress management, and exercise. And if all of those things are in balance, then you can spin along really nicely. You're moving along with your personal things, you're moving along well with your professional things, and everything's moving well. If one or more of those things are out of balance, it's going to be very difficult for you to kind of continue that grind. And your body will slow you down to make you focus on the life piece if you ignore it and only focus on the work piece, right? Like if you don't take time to make that balance, your body will balance it for you. And I see a lot of patients in that same situation. So things you can do to prioritize that are, first, decide really what your priorities are.
And
whole life.
I can attest to that too, because when I was doing my dissertation, I made sacrifices and health and nutrition and sleep sacrifices that I knew I was making. I had very little choice. But that's not true. I probably had some more control over it than I thought, but I knew it was just a bad time. I knew it was, a year and a half, and I just had to suck it up and get through it. And as soon as I did, I crashed. I mean, I started sleeping back 8-10 hours again. I was, getting back to more exercise and just, eating better and feeling better and spending time with my family. It sucked. It was awful. But I knew it was a short-term thing. I talked it over with the stakeholders. I let my wife know, hey, I'm really going to need help for this period of time. I don't exactly know how long it is. It could be a year, it could be 2, but it's somewhere in there. And I just have to get through this. because it is part of my North Star and my goal of accomplishing an EDD, right? And accomplishing a terminal degree. What I do with it after that, I'm not really sure. I was never sure if I was going to be a teacher. Not that wasn't really my goal or my plan, but I did want to have that terminal degree for eventually when I retired, then I could maybe look into teaching. Now, COVID happened and things got crazy and life changed, but you know, it was a bad period of time for me, and I knew it was going to be, but it was a sacrifice I was willing to make to get to a point that I knew would put us in a better spot. So, you know, I think you have to realize too that now if you don't have the family, if you don't have the commitments, if you don't have those things weighing on you, it's okay to kind of flex that line a little bit and grind and put in the commitment and put in the time now and make those sacrifices now, so that you don't have to make them later when the family does come and when everything does happen for you later. But there still has to be a bare minimum of you know, health and keeping up with your sanity, or else you know, you're going to run yourself ragged. So
And I would even like rephrase that from a different perspective too, that not that if you don't have the family and the other responsibilities weighing you down, I would look at that from the other perspective as well. Like you don't have the family and the social support lifting you up.
right.
So that can be another issue as well. So if you don't have that support network, that's also going to really impair your life work balance. So for me, like I'm very clear that being a mom is my life's work. Being a physical therapist is a great hobby. And the work that I do, despite the fact that I only work part-time, that doesn't mean I want to have a small career. So in the time that I do dedicate towards working, I maximize that time.
Right.
So think about like what your priorities are for your whole life. Is that being an athlete? Maximize that, plan that. And in the time you have for other things, crush it. Crush your student study time, plan that study time, use that time, crush that time. Plan the time to rest, recuperate, find that social support, and maximize all of those pieces. And for me, I don't do anything full time because that works best for me for my life balance. I teach part-time, I work part-time, I work on my own business part-time, I'm with my kids part-time, and with my friends part-time. And I've identified these are the things that help me be successful. And these are the things that detract from that success. And sometimes I have what I call a whelm level. Like I'm not overwhelmed, I'm not underwhelmed, but I'm like straight whelmed. And I'm like at that spot where it's going to go over, it's going to go under. And I know when I get to that point that I need to ask for help. And I would say that's the last part about life work balance, is having somebody or some resources where you can truly like reach out and ask for help. And that can be a mentor, that can be a friend, that can be a family member, but somebody who knows you that you can authentically, completely communicate with and say, I am at my red line and I need help. I need help refinding my priorities. I need help rebalancing.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things to remember here too is that personal development and professional development do have a little bit of overlap, right? There is some overlap there because especially if you look at the business side of things, right? If you look at running a business, I had to completely revalue and reevaluate my personal development and my professional development plan when I started my business, because I knew, again, it was going to be taking time away from family and other things, right? So as a small business owner, like, you know, that in itself is professional development, right? But it's also personal development because you're brave enough to take those steps and make those changes and sacrifices to grow both personally and professionally, you know. And so that overlap can sometimes you know, be a help as well, because you know you're growing in two different planes at two different times, and it's just, you know, the small wins here and there along the way just kind of all feed into each other eventually, and you become this you know, big massive star like the president of the Colorado APTA, you know. So it can happen, and I'm sure it will, because you've got this plan in place and you've got the strategy to get there. So
Also, worlds collide.
yeah.
So like at my kids' school, they talk to the kids about being honorable leaders and being lifelong learners. That's part of their student creed. And I was working on my homework for my fellowship and like struggling a little bit with life work balance during that because it's a lot of work in a short amount of time. And my 10-year-old said to me, Mommy, you really are a lifelong learner, aren't you? And I was like, okay, so I just double dipped. I got professional points, I got parenting points. And, today I said, oh, like I'm going to post this podcast that I recorded on my YouTube channel. And my 12-year-old was like, you have a YouTube channel? He's like, well, I'm going to subscribe so that people know how good it is, just like so. And my daughter gets to see me being a leader and seeing me talk to people. And like the concept that people want to hear their mom talk about something professionally. I mean, I had as part of the Centennial Scholar Program, a project that I worked on was in the APTA magazine. And I was able to show that to my kids, and they were able to see something that I had done. And when I worked as a vaccinator, I was able to say to my kids, Mom did something to stop the pandemic today professionally, to make things better. And so I think that's when those like overlaps happen and everything is in balance, right? Like it all pays off, like all that hard work of parenting, all that hard work of professional development like comes together and you're like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome.
Any other questions I can answer for you? I had to finish my Oprah quote, and you see that seed is bloomed into a beautiful flower.
Oh yeah, I was wondering why all the sunflower
Right.
seeds-
Way to bring that all together. Way to bring
I know.
that full
I felt
circle.
like I had to point it out though. So
Mhm.
happy to take any questions, and then lots of ways to connect. I'm happy to support you wherever you are on your professional journey. As I said, it's part of my vision as a physical therapist to support professional development and growth for physical therapists and physical therapist students. So if there's anything I can do to support you on your journey, please let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering if you have any like templates of
Yes.
BEPP
Mhm.
that you could share, because I really like the one you showed for your hospital, like the
Yeah.
review that you did.
So I helped design that, but I can't share this one specifically, but I have one that's a little bit different that will include some professional planning as well on there. So you can kind of get that whole piece.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to share that.
And I think what we can do too is we can likely link it to a direct link to your website or so, and then we can have them get it from there. When they watch the replay, we'll put the link in the YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Definitely. We can definitely do that. And then just definitely thank you for joining us here at the BEPP Student SIG. Another great meeting. And then honestly, I think a great way to close out the summer.
Yeah.
I love it.
Very much.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.